Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Community Alcohol Partnership's second webinar this year, CAP, the 18 to 25 approach. I'm Gillian Walters, the Head of Business, Operation and Events at CAP. Many of you will know my name as it has appeared already on your invitations and registration documents. We're going to be recording questions throughout the webinar today, which you can add on the right-hand side of the page. And at the end, you'll all have 10 minutes in which we can answer as many questions as we can. Anything that we don't have time to answer, we will follow up with you after the event. The webinar will be recorded, so we can send you all a link following the event that you can share with your colleagues and anybody that wasn't able to make the live show today. Without further ado, I'm going to pass straight to our chairman, Derek Lewis, who will be opening the event for us.
Thank you, Gillian, and a very warm welcome to everyone who's joining us this morning. We're delighted to have so many participants in this seminar. This is the second in a series of such seminars or webinars, which are designed to spread best practice and share ideas to help us all in our goal of reducing alcohol harm among young people and creating a culture of responsible drinking. Use of video conferencing, which is now so well established, is enabling us to offer these events much more cost effectively and with much wider participation. So we're deeply grateful to the technology providers that are enabling us to do so. Just by way of a little background, Community Alcohol Partnerships, or CAP, started now 15 years ago with a focus on underage drinking. But more recently, we've recognized that young people do not simply become mature adults on reaching the age of 18. What they've learned in previous years about alcohol can be forgotten or eroded by finding themselves in a heavy drinking culture at university or whatever educational institution they are subsequently at. So in 2017, we decided to expand the remit of CAPs and to allow, and indeed to encourage, local CAPs to extend their target audience to include 18 to 25-year-olds. And some excellent pioneering work has been done by CAPs like Cardiff and Reading, which have focused on excessive drinking among their large student populations. More recently, we've been delighted to develop a relationship with SOS UK, and this we hope will allow both organisations to be more effective in promoting responsible drinking in student populations and in reducing the alcohol harm that can blight the lives and achievements of students. CAP is an unusual organism. It's not a structured hierarchical organisation, but it's a living and evolving network made up of groups of people up and down the country committed to the goal of reducing alcohol harm. Each group or local partnership addresses its own particular problems using solutions that have been developed by others or indeed developed by themselves where they have an unusual issue. And those innovations are shared, making best practice better and spreading it more widely. And so today is very much about that sharing. We're looking forward to the contributions of our very varied group of speakers and to the input of everyone on the webinar in our discussion session. So I hope it will be a helpful, informative, stimulating webinar today. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm delighted now to hand over to Tracy Lum, who is the Senior Project Manager for Wellbeing at SOS UK. So welcome, Tracy. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say about your programs, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Derek, for the introduction. So as Derek said, my name's Tracy Lum and I'm the Senior Project Manager for Wellbeing at SOS UK. So I'm here today just to give you a brief intro into the work that SOS and NUS are doing to promote responsible drinking within students. So I'm really pleased to see that the Community Alcohol Partnerships have extended their work to 18 to 25-year-olds based on the great work that they've been doing on underage drinking. So often two things when I tell people about my role is, firstly, I'm trying to stop students drinking. Firstly, I don't believe in this. It's not achievable, and I don't think my job would be very fun if that was the case. Second, there's an assumption that there's nothing we can do about university culture, that drinking is just part of university culture and students won't listen to us. So I aim in the next sort of 15 minutes to show you that I'm not here to stop students drinking, but there are things that we can do to promote responsible drinking without sounding like a teacher or a lecturer who's trying to tell students what to do. So before we look at some examples of ways that we can reach our students, I'm going to give you a brief introduction of the programme to understand sort of where these examples come from. So in mid-2013, the Home Office approached NUS to build on our behavioural change programme related to environmental behaviour, green impact, to develop a behavioural change programme working on responsible drinking. This initially had a crime reduction focus, and in 2014 we received funding to fund a one-year pilot in behavioural change to reduce promote responsible drinking. So this pilot was really successful, and we showed really positive outcomes. And since then, we've continued to run the programme on a self-funded basis. And we've now worked with over 31 universities and student unions together, looking at ways that we can generate whole campus change. So it is an accreditation scheme. One thing that's really important to us is that the accreditation scheme is a partnership between the student union and the university. We've seen across the country great pockets of work in sort of smaller departments, maybe across the university. So the university wellbeing team might be doing something great, the student union might be doing something great, the accommodation team. But what this programme and what we've aimed to do is to bring everyone together to make sure that we're generating a whole campus change and not just these small pockets of good practice. As I think you'll know, that universities a key moment of change for many students when they might be more susceptible to developing new habits and behaviours. And ultimately, we want to be making campuses more safe for students. So just quickly going through the alcohol impact process. So a student union and university would join in partnership. So as I said, that's really important to us, that we don't work with either in isolation. We would then do an introductory support session with them, going through the programme, looking at who needs to be on board, what sort of work we want to start, and really sort of getting to grips with what are the areas that we want to be working on. Each university and student union will have different impacts from alcohol-related incidents or support, and we need to make sure that we're working on what's relevant to that university. We will then set up a steering group. So that will have participants from across the university. So we might have accommodation, security, bar staff, our wellbeing teams, our community teams, and we'll start working towards the criteria. So these criteria range from shaping alcohol policy to working in partnership with community groups, designing bespoke interventions, which are where we see the really innovative work. Throughout this process, they'll receive ongoing one-to-one support, so monthly phone calls. We've got a whole bank of resources of good practice. As you can imagine, we've been running this now since 2014 with 31 participants. We've got a great sort of good practice behind us, great case studies. And we can pretty much guarantee if something is going on at one university, it's happened at another university, and we can share good practice and ways to address that. In addition to sort of the online support, universities and student unions receive an in-person support day, which is completely bespoke to them. They can do training, we can facilitate meetings, however they want to use that support day. And then 2 group support days per year where all our partnerships working get together and share good practice, or as we like to call it, steal ideas. But that's fine because we're trying to generate positive change. Once the partnership has worked through the process and they feel that they have achieved enough of the criteria, they're going for accreditation, I would then go on site at the university and train their student auditors. So that's a really important part of the process as well, is that at the end of the process, I'm not the one that audits that university, it's their students that holds them to account. Ultimately, I don't live in that city or town, and it's their students that experience alcohol on a day-to-day basis, and they're the ones who will feed back to me that actually this university is doing great in this pocket of work, but we could be seeing improvements in this. And usually the student auditors give great feedback on what they want to see happening and what they feel is going really well. Hopefully they've achieved their accreditation. If they have, we will write the report of giving them where they've done well, what areas we can improve in, what areas the auditors would like to see some further work, and then they'll achieve their accreditation. And that accreditation lasts for 2 years. At that point, we would re-audit them to check that not that they're redoing everything again. We're not here about sort of doing work for the sake of doing work. It's that they've moved with the time. So they've moved and addressed what is happening within that university in those 2 years and made progress. So that's just a sort of basis of how the process works. So you kind of know in the next few slides where my examples are coming from. So I think we said at the start of what can we do? University, we know from our statistics that students believe that getting drunk is just part of university culture. And that's what we're trying to change, that sort of social norm that all students do is drink. So what can we do? So there's 5 things that I've listed there. The next 3, the first 3, I'm going to go through in the next couple of slides. The last 2, I'm unfortunately, due to time, I just don't have time to go into detail. But the 4th one, they're working with colleagues. So I sort of touched on this at the start. One of the real bonuses of doing this accreditation scheme is that it spans across the student union and university, the residence teams, the security teams, students, academics. So rather than seeing sort of those good pockets of work individually, with the accreditation scheme, in a way forces those departments to come together and do work collaboratively. The final one there, offering appropriate support. So appropriate support pathways is obviously important, but it's also important to make sure students are aware of them. Quite often we have this great support in place, and then when I go on site to talk to students, they say, oh, I didn't realise that we had that in place. So it's great having the support, but if your students don't know about it or know what they can access, but also it's important to link those appropriate support pathways with any sort of disciplinary pathways you have, code of conduct. So, for example, if a student is asked to leave the SU bar because they're too intoxicated, what happens following that? Is it followed up by your wellbeing team? Do they send out an email and say, oh, we know this happened last night, we have these services, please reach out if you need us? And then if we're continuing to get people that are continuing to be asked to leave, rather than just going down a disciplinary action, are we linking that to appropriate support services? And the next 3 I'll sort of cover more in the next few slides. So the first one I said was, what can we do? Well, we want to promote a culture of responsible drinking. Ultimately means we need to make some operational changes. So thankfully, I would say that things have moved on. But I know when I went to university, my university life was all centred, any socialising was centred around alcohol. We didn't have alternative places to socialise in the evening. If you didn't drink, there wasn't places to go with your friends. So if we're trying to get students to make more positive changes, we need to be making sure that the campus allows that to happen. So examples I've put there, so alcohol-free spaces that run into the evening. I still unfortunately visit universities and SUs where the students tell me if we don't drink in the SU bar, there is nowhere else to go in the evening. And unfortunately, that is still happening. And I recently did an audit, and not only, although the partnership that we were working with had these spaces open, the students then said, well, they have those spaces open, but we'd like to see events in them. We'd like to see musicians in them. We'd like to see themed food events in them, rather than, it's great that we've got these cafe spaces, these non-alcohol spaces, but we want to see these events happening in them. Looking at your non-alcohol alternatives and not just having them as your Pepsi, your orange juice, but making sure that we've got a range of non-alcohol alternatives, that they're more cheaply priced than their alcohol counterparts. And again, I spoke to students very recently, just last month, and they said, we wish you had more fancy mocktails in. We don't want to be just drinking our orange juice and our Cokes. We'd like to have those mocktails that our peers who are drinking alcohol are having with alcohol in. We're seeing a number of our partnerships that we're working with now having student welfare staff. So these are students who they're paid opportunities for students who work on the sort of big night outs, and they've kind of got two aims to them. They'll look after students when unfortunately they have had too much to drink, but the other aim is to be sort of proactive in talking to students before they get to that stage, and offering advice out, so that we're not just using them to deal with the aftermath. Thinking about your marketing, if we're trying to get students to drink more responsibly, are we marketing alcohol all over our SU, our university? Can we be putting more emphasis on marketing our food or our social spaces? And then you'll see lastly there, that's a pop-up cafe in one of our partnerships. So once we've made those sort of operational changes, the next thing we need to do is educate our students. Our students are adults ultimately, and they will make the choices they want to make. What we can do is give them information to make more informed choices. So these are a number of ways that I've just pulled out that our alcohol impact partnerships have done. So you've got posters there, social media posts, and you'll see those first two. They aren't sort of telling don't drink or drinking will do this. They're framing it in a way that actually 75% of students at Durham have said they regretted spending less and remembering more. And then the one next to it, about sort of 70% of students say that they don't feel under pressure to drink. So it's framing it in a way that's positive. Using stats is really important, so that we're not just saying don't drink. We've got the third one there is a video about actually drug use and sort of mixing alcohol with drugs. We've got alcohol awareness stands there. On the bottom left is a training that was offered to societies and sports groups. It was called Have a Word training, about talking to your peers about drinking. The two at the bottom on the right are responsible drinking events that have kind of got a fun factor to them. So the one at the very bottom on the right is Beer Goggle Mario Kart. But rather than just sort of having that as a fun activity, it was about a messaging of students were asked before they put the beer goggles on about how they would behave in the community, and then they were asked again afterwards to see, so that they could understand the differences about how they might behave on the way home, for example. And the one in the bottom, we had students guessing the amount of units in drinks, saying how many, asking to measure out units, all sort of promoting responsible messaging, but in a fun way. I've just included a slide here in pre-drinking, because usually when I speak to people, it's something that people want to have help with. Pre-drinking tends to be quite a big issue at universities, particularly in accommodation. And how we approach it is that we don't actually want to stop pre-drinking. Pre-drinking is quite an important social part It's important social for students in meeting their peers. What we actually do is need to be creative about either giving them an alternative or making it safer or giving them information. So the picture here on the left is actually it's from our pilot year. So it's an old example, but it's a great one because it demonstrated that they've provided an alternative. On their main student night, they did Pancake Cafe, where students could go and have free pancakes, which was part of their pre-drinking. It basically, pancakes slowed down their drinking, but also included a space that students could socialize. And actually they found that some students then didn't go on to the big night out. They were quite happy staying with the pancakes. And then the one on our right is a scheme in which we encourage students, if they're going to pre-drink, to come into our SUs to pre-drink. There's a number of reasons for that. We've got staff on hand, so it's much safer. But also, if you're ordering a vodka and Coke, say from a bar, you're getting a single vodka and Coke. If you're doing a vodka and Coke at home, you're likely pouring, I would say, at least a triple. I've honestly seen people pour much more than that when they free pour. And I'm working with a partnership at the moment who's doing very similar, where they're having like a pre-event. They're actually naming it and branding it to encourage students to come on and have food before the big night out. It's very much branded as another event, which is really encouraging that we're going to see students utilise that. So pre-drinking, I've put it in there because we get asked about it a lot. It's not about stopping pre-drinking. We need to be creative in making it safer. So I've just put this up because one of the questions I said that I'd address at the start was, is it possible? Can we make changes in universities? For a long time, we've got this perception that students drink all the time. The media shows it. You hear stories passed down. Can we make changes? And I won't go through all of these because you can read them on the screen. But what I just want to say is, yes, we can. There are things that we can do to promote a more responsible drinking culture on campus, and may also make it inclusive for those that don't drink. So that's our main sort of alcohol impact programme. If anyone wants to contact us after the webinar, as I say, we've got a whole host of sort of case studies. If there is anything in particular, whether that was students in your community on your night home, or pre-drinking, or drink spiking, or anything that is a particular issue at the moment, then we've probably got examples of how we've addressed that. The other intervention that we run that I'm just going to touch on is our intervention that's called Drink Rethink. So Drink Rethink works on what we call IBA, which is identification and brief advice. We followed something on called the London Challenge, which looked at whether IBA, so identification and brief advice, could be delivered in different settings by non-professionals. So usually this identification and this brief advice is run in your doctor's surgeries. It's run in your alcohol and support services in the community. It's for those who have an increasing risk of drinking, which we might see in our students, but are not dependent yet. So this London Challenge that was first done, they identified that, yes, it could be delivered in different settings. They delivered this on the street in London, and it was done by non-professionals. So we took this approach and we tried it in students. So we train students to become ambassadors. So we call them Drink Rethink ambassadors. We train them to engage other students, who engage them in a questionnaire to identify their drinking level, and then offer them brief advice based on what their drinking level is. And that follows up as a pamphlet. And then 3 weeks after, we contact the students that were engaged to see whether the intervention made a difference. So we've run this at a number of sites. We've run it at UWE, at Keele, Manchester Met, Salford, and we ran it again at UWE last month. And we're just getting the results in from that now. And we've been really, really pleased with the results of showing that students have said after the follow-up surveys that it made them think about their drinking. It's something that could be repeated a number of times through the year. And yeah, if even if we're sort of half of the students that engage, it makes them think about their drinking, then we're sort of chipping into those social norms of that actually we can promote responsible drinking. So here's just a few pictures of it, showing students engaging students. When I did it recently, we engaged, and it was terrible weather, and we engaged 100 students in 2 hours who actually came up and spoke to us about their drinking, which is really, really positive. So just some of the benefits of this, it allows us to develop a responsible drinking approach. So it sort of supports that wider effort of your institution to make positive steps towards responsible drinking. It also provides data on your institute. So if you're from the questionnaire, we're able to gather information on what levels your students are drinking. IBA has been shown to be really cost effective in reducing the risks associated with drinking. So you'll see there that research by Public Health suggests that for every increasing or high risk drinking who receives it, there's a £27 return to the wider community. Students who have trained or acted as student ambassadors really enjoy it. They do really, really enjoy engaging with other students, but they also gain leadership skills, project management skills, team development. And one of the other things is you can repeat it. You could repeat it every alcohol awareness week during the freshers period. I should say anything you want to find out of these programs will be on our website, and I'm sure that will be provided to you after the presentation. But I think I have just got with 4 seconds left to the end of my presentation. So I will pass you back.
Thank you so much, Tracy. That was a really detailed and interesting overview of the work that SOS does to reduce alcohol harm amongst university students. CAP, myself, all of us really look forward to continuing to work closely with you as we develop more and more projects with a focus on young adults. I'm now going to introduce Ian Tumilty and Lauren Udawu, who lead the Cardiff CAP. Cardiff was our first community alcohol partnership to focus on young adults, and in 2020, they won our annual award for CAP of the Year.
Yeah, so should we just introduce ourselves? So I'm Lauren Udawu. I work in the Cardiff and Vale Public Health team. I'm one of the school health promotion specialists, and alcohol is a topic area that I lead on in the team.
I'm Ian Tumilty. I'm the Business Crime Reduction Manager, Cardiff Meets Business Crime, which is embedded within For Cardiff Business Improvement District.
So just wanted to give a bit of background as to why we chose the 18 to 25 age group. We looked at the data and we saw that Cardiff and Vale had the lowest percentage of young people drinking, aged 11 to 16. So yeah, we knew that our young people it wasn't such an issue in our younger people. But when we looked at the data for the admissions to the alcohol treatment centre and the police data for location of assaults, we could see, you can see on this on the map there's some hotspots, and we also could see on the little chart, you can see that the admissions to the alcohol treatment centre were overwhelmingly 58% of them coming from the 18 to 24-year-olds. So with 3 universities in Cardiff as well, we felt that this was a really valuable age group to target for the work. So that's kind of why we chose the 18 to 25 age group. And then it's a geographical area. So we've chosen the areas where the hotspots or the red spots are there, which is where we know the city centre, where all the nighttime economy is, and then the main student residences around that. So that's kind of our geographical area and our age group. So when we started CAP, we started it with a baseline survey for went out to the 3 universities. And just some really interesting information, really, which is not a surprise, but we knew that people were most likely to drink alcohol after purchasing it in their student house and the bars, clubs. Those are the main places people were drinking. And then when we looked at their motivations for drinking, similar to what we know, it was mainly around socialising, enjoying drinking, and then something about adhering to those social norms of a student as well. So when we look a bit drill down a little bit deeper on the qualitative data, we saw that 72% of students said that they thought there was good options for to socialise with and without alcohol, so that was positive. However, 86% thought there could be more alcohol-free social activities available, and almost 80% or 79% thought that intoxicated or drunk students create problems for the areas they live or for other residents. So we could see that there was an issue there. So just a very quick overview of Cardiff CAP then. So we're quite a large partnership, aren't we, Ian, of many organisations, and we've got the sole aim of trying to work together to reduce the harm from alcohol in the 18 to 25 age group in Cardiff. Our partnership includes students themselves, retailers, and lots of members from the nighttime economy. Like I said, it's focused geographically as well, and really trying to just working towards developing a culture of young adults drinking responsibly and safely, and reducing that burden on public services and just improving well-being. So it's not about trying to stop people drinking, it's a very different approach to that. Here's just a selection of some of the partners involved. It's not exhaustive at all, it's just a little selection there to show you the breadth. We've got the street pastors, the council, all 3 universities, the student unions, the police, for Cardiff, the council, the health board, whole array of partners, treatment services as well. So yeah, really good partnership. When we look at our progress, like I said, we've launched on the 20th of November in 2018, so we've been going quite a while now. And the first thing was a workshop to develop the action plan and look at the focus of the work. And then there was a steering group established, and there's terms of reference for that. We had a year 1 celebration event where we looked at all the progress and celebrated all the hard work. And since then, we've had annual action plans that we've developed each year. And we had a COVID-specific one, didn't we? COVID adapted, because obviously there's been, the impact on students and the nighttime economy has been dramatic. We've also got subgroups. So we've got our action plan, and then we've got 2 main subgroups to it because we felt they were quite discrete. So we've got the nighttime economy, and then we have a student/university subgroup. So we have 2 groups that meet separately and push those actions forwards. So yeah, that's okay. So the real benefit, I think, has been the partnerships and the relationships that have formed. Such good buy-in from everyone around the tables, real diverse mix of people around the table, all bringing really valuable perspectives, and just coming together every other month for those meetings. I think it's sparked a lot of new ideas, a lot of sharing of information, recognition as well for all the hard work that partners are doing. And it's just, there's some really good relationships and working relationships formed. So that's been great. Just going to touch on a few of the successes. There's so many, but here's some of it just to highlight, I suppose. We've got a good relationship with some of the Masters in Public Health students. So one of the students did a dissertation for us, which has helped inform our work about successful interventions to reduce alcohol consumption. So please. There's so much work that goes on in Cardiff to try and keep the nighttime economy and the students safe. So there's all kinds of things. There's the alcohol treatment centre, there's street pastors, there's safety buses. Such a lot of work goes on to keep the student population safe. We got 2 CAP awards. So in 2020, this was a young person's drama project that 2 of the university students were involved with, where they brought more drama into the substance misuse education for under 18. So that was a valuable contribution that they got award. We've created loads of resources that have been developed by the students themselves. We did some COVID-specific ones. We've got a whole suite of resources and animations. And then we host them all on a Padlet, which has got so many resources it's like a bank of resources, and that all the partners can use and add to. We've done lots of training, so we do alcohol brief intervention training. We've trained street pastors, the Cardiff University residents life advisors. There's also been the Loxone training to door staff, all the door staff in the city centre. There's the photograph of me and myself at the CAP of the year in 2020. And then the last one I think there is
Yeah, and I lead for Cardiff on the Purple Flag as Purple Flag Coordinator. Purple Flag is an accreditation scheme run by the Association of Town and Centre Managers, and we find it fits very well with CAP. But if you're not aware of Purple Flag, the benefits are to raise profile, improve public image, wider patronage, stronger partnerships. So again, fits very well with CAP. We get an independent authoritative audit on the whole nighttime economy. We're looking benefits to increase expenditure, lower crime and antisocial behaviour, and a more successful mixed use of the economy. And actually, this Saturday coming, we've got the two assessors visiting Cardiff to see if we get the accreditation for the third year in a row. So fingers crossed for Saturday. This is the Students' University subgroup. I've returned a lot on for this one.
Yeah, so we just wanted to give you a flavour of the kinds of actions that are in our action plans. So this is this year's action plan. It's just got some key actions that we're going to develop this year as part of that student and university subgroup. There is around the alcohol-free socialising a map, piloting some of those moderation activities, looking at dissertation ideas for exploring attitudes to alcohol within the sports societies, looking at information for some of the international students around the laws, and then looking about whether we could potentially do Purple Flag for universities as well. So those are some of the things developing in that subgroup.
And lastly, this is the nighttime economy subgroup, which I chair. I'm looking at exploring non-alcohol sales, piloting an alcohol-free nights with our partners in the licensees forum, and I'll leave them up there for you to see as we're running out of time now. But this is the plans for the next for the year going forward, and I think we're just about on time to hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Lauren and Ian, for that great presentation. You've really given the audience a feel of what an 1825 CAP can and does look like in practice. Some of the key things that I picked up on there was about how you said it was dynamic, it's about information sharing, and the examples really showed you how wide the partnership can be and who can be included. If anybody that's on this call or afterwards would like to set up something similar, I'm sure that you wouldn't mind us sharing your model with them moving forward. I'm now going to introduce my colleague, Matthew, who is CAP's regional advisor for the South of England and Wales. Matt has worked really closely with Ian and Lauren to support the Cardiff CAP.
Hello, and welcome again to the Community Alcohol Partnership 18 to 25 webinar. I'm Matthew Knight, one of the regional advisors supporting organisations to set up and deliver CAP projects across the Southwest, Southeast and Wales. At present, we have 2 established 18 to 25 or university CAPs in Cardiff and Reading, with hopefully 2 more across the South coming soon. Today, I will be giving you a brief overview of the process of setting up an 18 to 25 CAP. You will have heard or will be hearing a lot about Cardiff CAP today, but this is a testament to the hard work and dedication of the strong and effective Cardiff CAP partnership led by Lauren Adow, delivering great successes and already now working through their second action plan. My presentation today will include establish the lead, establish the need, establish the partnership, where does it fit, how will it be delivered, and first of all, what we do. Many of you here today will be fully aware of what CAP does, but for those who don't, CAP activity is always locally determined, but would generally encourage and include a focus on education, enforcement, public perception, communication, positive activities, and evaluation. Just a couple of my favourites. So positive activity. CAPs across the UK offer a range of alcohol-free activities for young people to enhance their confidence, health, and well-being. And evaluation. All CAPs carry out a baseline evaluation and a further evaluation at the end of the project. This will demonstrate the positive difference CAPs are making to their local communities. If you'd like to know more about CAP activity, please visit our website under the What We Do page to find out more or speak to one of the CAP advisors. Establish the lead. Sometimes the hardest part of the job is finding that person to lead a new project. Someone who has the will and determination to try something new or take the first stride to a new goal. I was lucky enough to meet a representative from the Cardiff Public Health team in 2018 who had alcohol on their portfolio of work and that started the ball rolling pretty quickly. As you will see, there are many suitable candidates to take this role, but thinking specifically about the 18 to 25 caps, I would focus your efforts within these groups or organisations. The CAP lead role can be successfully delivered as part of an existing role, and support will also be given by your CAP regional advisor for the life of the project. Establishing the need. Those already part of nighttime economy groups or partnerships will be acutely aware that working together we can pool our efforts, ensuring people can continue to enjoy socialising and relaxing in a city centre or through their university journey. Many university areas will already have excellent projects which focus entirely on the things I just mentioned, including Best Bar None, Purple Flag, Pub Watch, Drink Aware, Business Improvement Districts, NUS, and many more. You may then be asking the question, how can CAP fill any gaps? You may already have the data to support these questions or may already be looking at starting in CAP, but we can help with establishing the need. So research. Developed by the Cardiff Public Health team, a university survey was conducted at the start of the project to ascertain issues highlighted by students, so actions could be specifically tailored to their needs or gaps in current provision. Holding small meetings early on to establish buy-in into CAP and how to move forward, including organisations from the council, trading standards, licensing, university members or groups, business improvement districts or town centre leads. A larger partner meeting to again deliver a presentation on CAP, but also allow partners to give ideas and suggestions to what they would like to see as part of a new action plan, and signing their name next to those actions they could play a part in. Speaking with bars, restaurants and club owners, surveys were then conducted where one CAP highlighted an issue of displacement of young people. This was raised as a potential concern alongside fake IDs and preloading. Recently speaking with a community safety manager who was doing all of the above, who recently asked for a CAP, the need for him was a gap with retailer engagement, which CAP is now supporting to enable improved communication and reach across the nighttime economy group. Establishing the partnership. At this point, you will already be a long way to establishing your key partners for the project, with hopefully many of those already pledging their support and signing up to actions at previous meetings or events you've planned. One thing to remember is that the list will always be growing, bringing in more knowledge and ideas to the partnership. CAP partners come from a wide range of organisations, including trading standards, public health, community safety, pub watch, retailers, student groups and university groups, youth teams, licensing, police, and many more. Don't be afraid to utilise existing partnerships to reduce the work you have to undertake. Many existing groups will already have the partners you need to have on board, and many will appreciate the opportunity to have one less meeting in the diary. Where does the CAP fit? You will see that CAP can be effectively delivered using a variety of methods or work streams. Utilising existing meetings will enable you to add CAP to fixed agendas, reducing the need for additional planning. So work stream 1. CAP sits under a pre-established group within the university, such as their nighttime economy group. Partners may include their own comms team. So work stream 2. CAP sits under the pre-existing community safety meeting. CAP is a fixed agenda item within this meeting. So how will it be delivered? As you will be aware, Cardiff CAP was our first 18 to 25 project launched back in 2018. With an action plan developed by the Cardiff Public Health team. As I said, we're in a lucky position that Public Health were the lead organisation of the CAP, and with the research carried out, action plan ideas from partner organisations and existing data, we were able to formulate a comprehensive action plan that all partners were bought into and worked on during the first 12 months of the project. The action plan was then assessed at the end of year 1 and new actions added and version 2 were born. Monthly or bi-monthly meetings are held with an opportunity for partners to meet and discuss progress from the previous weeks. Alongside this, best practice is shared from other CAP areas across the UK. This also gives an opportunity to highlight any emerging issues and concerns and adapt or change work to position resources in areas of need. Thanks again for listening to me speak, and I'd like to finish with this. You'll see in the quote from Cabinet Member for Housing and Communities, Linda Thorne. I would like to extract a small piece of that quote, which I believe describes CAP perfectly and how partnership working can make a positive difference. By working together, we can pool our efforts into ensuring people can continue to enjoy socialising and relaxing in a city centre, but with a focus on reducing crime and antisocial behaviour associated with excess alcohol, so everyone feels safer as a result. So thanks again, and I look forward to hearing about your new 18 to 25 CAPs in the future.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was a really useful insight into why you might want to set up a CAP with a focus on supporting young adults and how you can go about it. If you would like any more information on setting up a CAP, please do just get in touch with me and I can introduce you to your local CAP advisor. Also, if you do have any further questions during today's webinar, please do continue to put them along the right-hand side of the page and we will have time at the end to answer them. One of CAP's great strengths is the breadth of our partnerships and the range of organisations that we work with who bring huge added value to CAP projects. Our next speaker today is Helena Conenbeare, the Chief Executive Officer for the Alcohol Education Trust, who recently presented evidence to the House of Commons Drink Spiking Evidence Review.
Good morning, and first of all, thank you very much, CAP, for organising today, bringing together this very interesting group of speakers. So I'm the CEO and founder of the Alcohol Education Trust, and we work with 11 to 25-year-olds across the whole of England and Scotland. We work in three ways: training the trainers, working with parents and carers, and providing interesting and engaging activities for young people themselves. Really, this is a very complex task, and in a very brief presentation, I haven't got time, but really this is just to show you that really every young person is susceptible to alcohol-related harms, whether the wealthy or more affluent or the poorest in our society. Coming into a university setting, I think it's very, very important to know what young people are facing within a sixth form setting before they come. And again, I just wanted to put this slide in to show you that cannabis is more available to young adults than cigarettes. So alcohol is only just ahead in terms of what is available and most easily for them to access. And then below those in terms of availability, it is MDMA, ketamine, and nitrous oxide. The greatest risk for underage drinking, I think it's very important for us to remember, for us to focus on what is most relevant to them, which is personal safety, unprotected or non-consensual sex, and accidents, and going to hospital for overindulgence. I did again just want to touch on cannabis because it's something we work very closely with together with alcohol, what we call polyuse. Those in treatment now are overwhelmingly there for 88% for cannabis, including skunk and spice, followed by alcohol. But then really on to what is really most important concerning today. Going back to October, the first cases of injecting by or what we call spiking by injection, came into the public domain and were covered very widely by the press. And we were asked for what evidence there was for prevalence of spiking. And there was very little evidence at the time collated across the UK as to where drink spiking was taking place, who was most susceptible to it. So we undertook a survey of some of the young people we work with, aged 16 to 25, and it was quite representative. About 460 were female, 250 were male, and some identified as non-binary. The geographical representation was very broad, from Newcastle down to Bournemouth, where I am actually today at Bournemouth University, which is very relevant. It was self-selecting, if you like, so we may have had a higher number of respondents who came to us because they'd experienced spiking, but actually comparing it with some very other broad surveys that we worked together with organisations such as VICE and the TAB, and more recently with SOS and NUS, seem to show a general prevalence of about 1 in 10 young people experience drink spiking. So the TAB survey was of 23,000 students, and their question was whether they had experienced spiking in university in their first term. And just to show you those figures, I've highlighted in red where the biggest surveys were, and I hope you may see perhaps your university represented there. But those in red were where the biggest surveys took place. But as you'll see, 11% of students had experienced spiking within their first term at university, which is really a very, very shocking figure. Students, we've heard from SOS today, and they carried out a survey in November 21 amongst just over 2,500 students. 14% of those knew or thought they'd been given drugs through their drinks without their knowledge. 7% of those were absolutely certain. And 33% of those respondents had been spiked at a local nightclub. But something I did want to draw your attention to is that 29% of those had been spiked at a house party. We've talked about pre-drinking and the likelihood of drinking at student houses. Our own survey found that there was an even higher prevalence. The first place of spiking taking place was actually at private parties, followed by bars and clubs. So we do need to bear that in mind. But shockingly, over 70%, or in our survey, 90% of respondents didn't report or felt confident about reporting their experience of spiking to anybody in authority, whether to the police, to the club owner, or to student welfare. Within the university setting, 25% of those who'd experienced spiking were supported to get home safely, but that's something I think we could certainly improve on. Something that we found, and we're asking those conducting surveys to look at, is where drink spiking is taking place, but also what type of drink is being spiked. And it may be very interesting for you to note here that 1 in 4 drinks that are being spiked were actually non-alcoholic, and that's very important to bear in mind. We're finding spiking is taking place in a variety of settings, including cafes, and particularly in gap years. And it's not always the stereotype, if you like, of young women being spiked by strangers in bars and clubs. It's very important that we stay aware of that. So just to give you a little bit more data there, these are our own surveys, private parties, followed very closely by nightclubs, lower percentages at bars at clubs. We thought percentages of spiking at festivals would be higher. We were quite surprised that it was as low as 7%. But those other locations are as broad as places like airports, fast food settings, and cafes. And it's something in terms of the nighttime economy or city centres that we do have to be aware of. This is just touching again on that confidence of reporting spiking. This is shockingly low, and I would ask you all to think about that we do build trust and understanding why young people are not reporting spiking. It varies from not thinking they'll be taken seriously, not thinking there'll be enough proof because they experience blackout or they can't remember what happened, or by the time they realise they've been spiked, it's more than 24 hours after the incidence of spiking. If you look at confidence in reporting to the police, YouGov did a very interesting poll finding that 40% of women didn't think the police would take them seriously, and again, nearly 40% of men. And if you look again at the bottom there, both women and men, nearly 50% of them didn't feel the venue would take them seriously or do anything about it as a result. These are all very concrete things that we can actively do something about. Those who were brave enough to report what happened to them to the police, in our survey, in more than 50% of cases, nothing happened as a result. Again, this is something we must do something about. Those who didn't report it, 22% of them said they wished they had, if they'd known more about who to go to for help and support. So what can make a difference? What would help us deal with drink spiking? And this is to do with our surveys of young people and a collation of NUS and SOS and ourselves. 15% said ads and raising awareness, more university at college and university, knowing what to do if they suspect that somebody else's drink had been spiked. Surprisingly low numbers in terms of providing covers and spikies to protect drinks. So again, some interesting things there for us to bear in mind. But what they most asked for was advice as to what to do if a drink had been spiked. Again, that's something we can really concretely do something about. So I'm having to really rush through here. In terms of a university setting, more counselling, mental health support. You may take with tongue-in-cheek the extensions for university deadlines, but again, a safer space at venues at universities that provide support with getting home was cited as really, very, very important. In terms of nightlife venues, additional security measures were seen as very important, raising awareness for students and how they can actively avoid spiking, but also calling out drink spikers. And I think that's something we often forget about. And also in terms of nighttime economies, 27% of students intend to avoid clubbing due to their concerns around drink spiking. So that again is something that we can address. I'm just going to have to come through very quickly now because I've run out of time. You can look at these slides after the event. Really just a call to action to finish with, that we do know that there's more reporting by victims as drink spiking has become more we are more aware both through the press and raising of awareness in nighttime settings and also within universities. And by combining more reporting, collecting more evidence and working together, it's only through those sort of collective engagements that will we really be able to do something to reduce the shocking prevalence of drink spiking amongst young adults. So thank you for your time, and sorry just to have to cut that short.
Thank you so much, Helena. Yes, sorry that we had to cut you short. As you said, if you are happy for your slides to be shared at the end of this, then we'll be more than happy to share them to the delegates today. Such a powerful speech about a topic that really is so worrying. It's an issue that is affecting the safety of young adults in particular throughout the UK. I'm sure that some, maybe many CAPs will choose to include an objective around drink spiking in them, and your insights are extremely timely. We will, of course, keep in touch, of course, a close partner with us, Alcohol Education Trust, on how your work progresses. Our next speaker is Rita King. Rita is the joint CEO of the Safer Business Network and has been leading on the relaunch of Ask for Angela and the scoping report for the Women's Night Safety Charter.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the Women's Night Safety Charter in London and also some of the work we've been doing around Ask for Angela. But just to let you know who we are, so at Safer Business Network, we run a number of business crime reduction partnerships across 11 London boroughs. We work very closely with the police and with local authorities. We also have our Safer Sounds partnership, which is a pan-London partnership, and we work very closely across all London boroughs to promote good practice in licensed premises and to support venues to put on safe events and operate to high management standards. As Gillian said, we've been leading on women's night safety, working with the GLA and with MOPAC on the next steps for London's Women's Night Safety Charter. And we've also been working very closely with the Metropolitan Police, leading the rollout of their welfare and vulnerability engagement training, and also Ask for Angela in the capital. So just to give you some background on the Women's Night Safety Charter in London, As you know, it's not a new initiative. It was originally launched in 2018 by the Night Star, Amy LeMay, but supporting activity was put on hold in 2020 due to the pandemic. And then obviously following a number of high profile and very tragic murders of women in London last year, there's been a renewed impetus around violence against women and girls, which has continued to gain momentum. And we know that other cities are also looking at introducing similar charter initiatives. I know that Cardiff has done so, and so has Bristol. So this is something I think we're going to see perhaps rolled out across the country. The charter itself has a number of objectives. So first, you would nominate a champion within your organisation who's actively promoting women's night safety. And it's around demonstrating to staff and customers that your organisation takes women's safety seriously. It's about encouraging reporting from victims and making sure that people know they're going to be believed when they do report, and also having processes and systems to record and respond to issues. Also around public spaces as well, making sure that they're safe for women. So we were first commissioned just about a year ago now by MOPAC and the GLA to look at the way forward for the Women's Night Safety Charter in London. When we looked at the signatory base, we could see that there was scope to grow that. So when we first started looking at the charter a year ago, there were just under 400 signatories, and that has now grown to just over 700. So it's doubled within the year, which is great to see. But initially, for example, there were only 8 London authorities signed up to the charter, 8 London boroughs, and now they're nearly all signed up, which is great. But we want not just nighttime economy venues. We're all aware of the issues around vulnerability in the nighttime economy, but actually the wider the partner base, the more we can work together to make an impact on this issue. So we want people that are involved in the public realm, such as bids, park authorities. Obviously, we want local authorities. We've got the Met Police and the City of London Police signed up to the initiative. There are a whole range of partners out there who can work together to really sort of make a difference. And if anybody listening is based in London and is not yet a signatory, it's very easy to sign up. You can just go to the GLA website and nominate your champion for women's safety. So what were we asked to do? So primarily we were asked to re-engage with signatories. So at that time, there were around 400 signatories. So we started by surveying signatories to see how they were getting on in meeting the objectives of the charter, what sort of good practice was out there. So with 400 signatories, we thought there must be some great work going on, but we need to identify that and we need to start sharing it. And also to get a feel from them as to what support they needed, what else would they like, and what would help them to actually reach their objectives in terms of being a signatory to the charter. And to back that up, we also carried out a series of one-to-one interviews with 20 organisations, again, representative of that signatory base. It was really important to us that we listened to the views of women as well and really got their input. So we held 3 focus groups, including female students from Greenwich University, women who are working at nights in a fast food chain at McDonald's in central London, and also the views of women working in security. At the moment, only 10% of SIA licences are held by women, and yet we know that women working in the nighttime economy, for example, can have a really positive impact on the ambience on the door of licensed premises, and we wanted to understand a bit more about what the barriers were perhaps to women into that sector. And then just looking at the existing resources that support the toolkit, there is the charter, there is a toolkit which sits on the website, but it was quite a flat document. So needed to sort of find out a little bit more how we could make that more interactive and more helpful for signatories. So the report has been published 2 weeks ago, which is great. And there were a number of recommendations made, as you can see there. So firstly, there was a really strong feeling from signatories that the Women's Night Safety Charter needs to be a branded campaign with centralised resources that signatories can use and promote themselves, and they can kind of unite behind that. There's also a need for training for signatories on the objectives of the Charter and tangible guidance on how they can meet these. They also really want mechanisms for networking between signatories and ways of sharing best practice on women's night safety issues. And I think it was felt as well that the existing toolkit that supports the Charter would benefit from wider promotion and a more interactive web-based approach, and that is actually happening at the moment. It has been sort of become a more of a web interactive tool, and that will be launched quite soon. So basically, leading on from that, we've now been commissioned by the Mayor's Office to deliver those recommendations over the next 12 months. So we will be working on that with a range of partners in London. We'll be developing a campaign. We're going to set up a steering group, a stakeholder steering group with representation from the signatory base, so that they've really got more ownership of the Charter and what it can achieve going forward. We will be developing additional training and resources, including some videos, very easy to use animated videos, which signatories can use in their own organisations. And we will certainly be looking to hold networking events and really trying to identify and share that best practice going forward. And then I just want to say a few words about Ask for Angela. As I mentioned, we all know that vulnerability in the nighttime economy is an issue. We've heard from Helena about the issues around drink spiking, which have been quite prevalent in recent months. In London, we have worked very closely with the Metropolitan Police to relaunch and refresh their welfare and vulnerability engagement training. It was launched last August, and it's very much about empowering staff working in licensed premises and giving them the confidence to make interventions when necessary, but also making sure that they're aware of Ask for Angela, which is ingrained within the WAVE training, and so that if somebody does ask for Angela, they know what that means and they know what to do. And then just for anybody who doesn't know what Ask for Angela is, it is a code word for people who need help. They may be on a date that's going wrong, or they may need to get away from somebody. So that's, oh, I've lost my, there we go. So yeah, there you go, discrete code word, I think I've covered that. And you will see from the images there that we've actually completely rebranded the campaign as well. So we've degendered it completely, because the feedback that the police got was that actually they didn't want a gendered, women-centric campaign. It should be perhaps a wider vulnerability campaign. So this has been rolled out in London across LGBTQ+ venues as well. And it's just very much about encouraging people to ask for help when they need it. If anybody hasn't seen the WAVE training from the Met, so it has been around for a few years, but it's very impactful. It is 2 videos. The first video is about a night that really everything goes wrong that could possibly go wrong, and it ends with quite a disturbing sexual assault. The second video actually shows where interventions can be made during that evening, and by door staff, by bar staff, by friends, and the evening turns out very differently. So it is actually very impactful in that respect. Got a lot of animation on these slides. Just a few key stats. So firstly, when we do the training, and we're a delivery partner for the Met on the training for WAVE, we always ask questions beforehand. So 56% say that they encounter vulnerability on a weekly basis working in licensed premises. I'm just going to zap through these very quickly because I know we're short of time. 93% have never had vulnerability training before, and 92% have implemented Ask for Angela, but without having had the training. So I think it is quite important that the training supports Ask for Angela and that all bar staff are aware of what it is. And then just working with some students at the Freshers' Fair in London earlier this year, 98% of the students we spoke to said they were more likely to attend a venue where Ask for Angela was in place, and they would feel safer doing that. So just to zap through the last few slides, it's really just to give you some idea of the sort of images and the sort of colour coding and the different posters that we've had. We've also got a social media presence. The staff receive a badge when they've had the Ask for Angela training. So if you see staff wearing that badge, you will know that they've been trained in what Ask for Angela is about, and WAVE training, and that's the social media assets as well. So just to give you an idea of those, And obviously I'm happy to take any questions later. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but sorry, Gillian, if I've got a little bit over time.
No, thank you so much, Rita. That was really interesting. We're getting some really good questions through as well. So after we tie up, then I'm sure we'll be coming back to you. I'm now going to pass over, last but very much not least, to Sylvia. Sylvia Oates runs the Best Bar None scheme. We've worked along Best Bar None since the creation of CAP. And we can really see the opportunity for 18 to 25 CAPs to align closely with your work in bars and in the nighttime economy.
Thank you very much, Gillian. And thanks very much for having us along. I hope everybody can hear me. So yes, Gillian, thank you for the intro. My name is Sylvia Oates, and I run the Best Bar None scheme for England and Wales. And really happy to join you here today and talk about some of the work that we're doing with the sort of 18 to 25-year-old age group. I thought I'd start with just explaining a little bit about the scheme itself for those who may not be familiar with it. So Best Bar None is an accreditation for licensed premises, and the objective of it is to raise standards and to share best practice and to encourage better partnership working between all of the statutory partners and the licensed premises, but also the wider partnerships in the places that Best Bar None operates. That can include universities, clearly, student unions, and various other initiatives like CAPS, where they exist alongside a Best Bar None scheme. So the initiative, the project itself, the Best Bar None scheme, involves a kind of an adaptable assessment, which we call it that because sometimes we have a core set of questions that are asked, and they are in distinct areas. So we look at things like how the venue is managed. We also look at things like how they keep their customers safe and how they keep their staff safe, but also how they contribute more broadly to the community through things like memberships of Pubwatch, or if they were active on a CAPS steering group, and those kind of things. We capture that in the accreditation as well. But we also allow a local area to set their own criteria, because sometimes we find that, say, for example, it's an area that's near water. There might be some water safety questions that they would like us to weave in terms of sort of promoting safety to customers and stuff. We always say that a Best Bar None scheme is best set up in partnership. It works really well when you have both businesses and statutory partners and other partnerships, third sector and education sector, etc., all working together to assess the premises and also to sort of direct the scheme and think about what it wants to achieve and how best to promote the objectives of the scheme. So we talk about it being an alternative to enforcement. So rather than the licensing officers, for example, going in and picking up on certain elements that perhaps a business could improve on with an enforcement hat on, they can go in and say, look, you know, we've identified this through the assessment. Here's some template policies and procedures that you can use to actually improve on this area. And then the next time they come back, you know, it's resolved, or perhaps at that point they can pick it up as an enforcement issue, but there's an opportunity to work in partnership to address some of those gaps. It's well supported. We've been supported for a large number of years by the Home Office, National Police Chiefs Council, and lots of other initiatives that you will have heard of, like Purple Flag, Safer Business Network we work very closely with, CAPS and other partners, Pubwatch as well, we have a very close working relationship with. The scheme itself is voluntary for premises to take part in. So again, it helps them to demonstrate that they are very responsible operators. I don't know if people can see this slide, but this is our kind of the reported impact. So we are starting to collect data now on what our local schemes are telling us are the impacts. So gosh, I've already got a 6-minute timer counting down, so I better whiz through these. But essentially, some of the biggest benefits of Best Bar None schemes are things like building a positive relationship between the licensed trade, the police and the local authorities, and improving knowledge and skills. Again, I'm happy for these slides to be shared so that people can see what the outputs are. In terms of setting it up in a local area, we work very closely when a team come to us and say they'd like to set up a Best Bar None scheme. We will work with them to give them all the tools and advice that they need to do that. And then essentially what happens is once a year, they will send a team of trained assessors out to go and visit a premises and sit with them and use our digital assessment tool to capture those elements that are in the accreditation, and then a report is created to inform the premises if they've passed. There are links in that report to help them to use template policies or to refer them to local policies if necessary or relevant to address some of the gaps, and then they get an opportunity to actually become accredited if they haven't made the grade the first time. So it's also about that continual improvement. And then we also work with local schemes to look at rewarding and supporting premises going forward. So we might, for example, organise a national training session around topics such as safety of women at night. We've got one at the end of April. If people on this call would like to join, you're more than welcome. We also are looking at things like counter-terrorism and some of those other sort of very important initiatives and themes that are coming through for, to manage a safe nighttime economy. What's my next slide? Oh, I think my clicker is, there we are, let's refresh. There we are. We're sponsored by the drinks industry and also some operators, which is really important because we get lots of feedback from the ground and from operational premises around how the scheme is working, and also perhaps criteria that should be added in to strengthen the accreditation and make sure it's relevant to the current situation on the ground and what they're seeing. And we also are very heavily supported by the trade associations, who we're very lucky to have on our board. Okay, talking about university accreditations, we work very closely with the NUS, and they have a scheme themselves where they will go and accredit any premises that is an NUS member, any student union bar. So they have a large number of locations that they go and accredit with the Best Bar None scheme. But then we also have areas where regional schemes incorporate a university and the university becomes accredited through that scheme. The other way that we see that works really well for Best Bar None schemes and university partnerships is that clearly the nighttime economy in towns and cities relies very heavily on students. And so in order to encourage premises to apply, we've seen places like Nottingham have included a map of Best Bar None accredited premises in their prospectus to show that partnership between the city centre and the university and like their safety agenda. But the premises really like that because obviously it promotes their premises to the student audience. And they also encourage that any kind of clubs and societies choose a Best Bar None accredited premises to be their kind of meeting place. So there's a lot of local work that gets done through universities and Best Bar None schemes to kind of tie them together. And we also provide a central scheme, which is a scheme that we manage ourselves, and we can then go and send our own assessors out to any university that may not be an NUS member and does not fall within a regional scheme area, and we can go and accredit those. So, for example, we've just accredited Chester University, is the latest place that has been successfully accredited. Sorry about this, is the internet clicker is, there we go. So if anybody would like to speak to us about the Best Bar None scheme, it's free to set up a scheme in your area. You get the support of our national team on a complimentary basis as well. That's all paid for by the drinks industry and the sponsors that we have. And we have lots of templates and guidance to help you set up your scheme. So it's quite a simple process, and we hold the hands of whoever sets up a scheme in their area every step of the way. And then we also have a very good opportunity for sharing between Best Bar None regional areas. So I mentioned the meeting we have at the end of April. We invite all schemes to send a coordinator along, and we tend to have discussions about emerging issues such as drink spiking. As we came out of the pandemic, we had quite a few meetings about the concerns around what impact that would have on crime and antisocial behaviour. So there's lots of benefits to being part of that community as well. And that's me. Thanks, Gillian.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. It's always a pleasure working with Best Bar None. You've shown us that when there are already areas of partnership in place, we can use these to work together. For example, when we start a CAP, using the SOS model and having a Best Bar None in place in a nighttime economy, rather than reinventing the wheel each time. In conclusion, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers today. I hope that everybody online has found the webinar useful, and this has shown you why and how you may want to set up a CAP to reduce alcohol harm within young adults in your area. We are really lucky to have so many pre-existing partnerships with organisations such as the Alcohol Education Trust, Best Bar None, and the Safer Business Network, who can bring huge added value to CAP partnerships. We've set aside some time, as I mentioned earlier, for questions. So I'm now going to pass over to our CAP advisor, Jane Boot, who is our moderator today. Any questions that we don't have time to answer, we will record them and we'll share them with you after the event.
Thanks, Jill, and thanks for all the questions that have been sent in this morning. We've had a couple in around drink spiking. So Helena, I was going to start with you on those and then open out to other speakers to see if they got something to contribute in that area. So the first question was around, obviously we've heard this morning about lots of support, raising awareness and so on, but we've had a question in around, is there anything in terms of campaigns aimed at perpetrators themselves really to sort of discourage them from, you know, drink spiking in the first place?
One of our main issues with the perpetrators of drink spiking is the lack of prosecution. So any of you who will have seen the figures or our evidence to the House of Commons will show that, I mean, I think we've been looking at something like 9 prosecutions in the last year. So what we're working towards is having a separate charge for drink spiking on its own. I think that's very important. So at the moment, it's only really if it's linked to a violent crime or a sexual assault are those carrying out the spiking likely to be prosecuted in any way. So through the Home Office inquiry, that is looking very promising, and Priti Patel is championing that, because if drink spikers don't think they're going to be called out or they're not going to be caught, that's the first thing we've really got to do something about. But the second thing is actually making those who have experienced spiking or are with somebody who has been spiked is how crucial it is to report it, whether to the bar or venue or to the police or to student welfare at the university, so we can collate more evidence in a time appropriate time. So again, to make prosecution more likely, and things like gathering CCTV footage as well. So the short answer is no, we're not doing enough at the moment to call perpetrators out, and part of that is going back to my figures around where drink spiking is taking place. So as I said, 35% of the location was actually at private parties within our own survey, and with the NUS SOS I think it's 33%. And students are highly unlikely to report spiking at in those settings because they're worried about getting the party host into trouble, and also it means that somebody within their wider friendship group. So we've got a huge amount of work to actually do to ensure that those criminals who, they are criminals who may think it's a joke, who are carrying out spiking, in most cases with no extra offence, to make them realise that, there is a potential of prison, and it is a serious criminal offence, and we've got to do much more to bring awareness towards those, the potential outcomes for those thinking spiking might be a bit of a joke.
Thanks, Helena. And just as an additional, are there any interventions for sort of 13 to 15-year-olds around, raising awareness of this issue, or materials that are available now to CAPs in their work?
Absolutely. So at the end of my presentation, you'll see a link to 2 short films, one show around, for students around where drink spiking is taking place, and some advice on how to stay safe. If you visit either the talkaboutalcohol.com website, there's a area with resources for young people themselves of that age group. For slightly older students, there's a website called life-stuff.org with a whole area on drink spiking. And then for teachers and professionals, if they visit alcoholeducationtrust.org, there's a whole wealth of resources around drink spiking and drink spiking prevention.
Great, thank you very much for that. Our next questions are for you, Rita. largely kind of ones of geography. First of all, we've had a question about Ask for Angela, and is that a UK-wide scheme? And then the second part is around the Women's Nighttime project. Is the scope for that, again, to be more widened across the country?
Thanks, Jane. So firstly, Ask for Angela, yes, it's not a new initiative. It originated in Lincolnshire some years ago now. All that we've done in London is the Metropolitan Police have refreshed that initiative. They've produced new assets, and what they're really trying to do is to not push out those assets until venues have had the training, because they really want to make sure that if somebody sees a poster, they go and ask a member of the bar staff for help. They want to make sure that they receive the help that they need, and that the bar staff are aware of what Ask for Angela is. And I think that's partly the danger if you roll out a poster campaign without actually having that backup training. But yes, Ask for Angela is national. Other areas are running with it. It would be nice if we could have consistent national assets. I think if we could have a consistency of kind of the branding, but we're probably not quite there yet. We have had interest from outside London in our sort of branded approach in London, but obviously there are some copyright issues with that. It's the Met, it's other partners, but certainly there has to be scope maybe to roll that out on a more consistent national basis, I think. In terms of the charter itself, I think, as I said, a number of other cities are looking at similar initiatives. I know that colleagues in Cardiff, they've already done that, and obviously Bristol as well. I know that Nottingham are looking at it. I know that Plymouth are looking at it too. We would obviously be happy to speak to any area that was interested in developing a charter with the experience that we've gained in doing the work that we have over the last year for the GLA and for MOPAC. But what we're really hoping actually is that the report that we've just published is helpful, firstly, to areas that are looking at similar initiatives, but also the programme of work that we're going to be developing over the next 12 months will really demonstrate how to engage with signatories to an initiative like that and how to support them. So I think it's still a bit of a work in progress, how we can actually make these charter initiatives effective and have impacts, but certainly there has been a lot of sort of support for the charter in London, and it's growing, and we're hoping to get a lot more signatories on board as well as we go forward. But I'd be happy to speak to any area that are interested in that approach.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Rita. And our last sort of couple of questions for Jill and maybe Derek as well is firstly around what do we consider the key attributes needed to build an effective CAP partnership? And then there's a second element around how much does it cost to set up a CAP and run one?
Shall I start, Gillian?
More than happy, Derek, yeah.
The things that really make CAPs work, and I'm sure Gillian can amplify on this, are getting the right leadership in place. It does require a coordinator who will be able to work with the local CAP advisor in getting it set up, who can commit some time to it, and is really passionate about achieving reductions in alcohol harm among young people. Secondly, it requires a broad group of organisations and agencies who have the capability of taking action and who are willing to work together in a quite relatively loose association, but one where they're prepared each to take on responsibility for individual actions that are within their own remits. Put those two things together and bring to bear the experience that we have at CAP of what works and what's necessary to make things work. And it's very unusual not to have a CAP that is successful. And the majority of them do achieve very significant reductions in alcohol harm across a wide range of parameters. But those, I think, are probably the key things. Gillian, you might want to add to that and perhaps talk a bit about the costs of a CAP.
Absolutely. Thank you, Derek. Yeah, to run on the ground, a CAP is completely free of charge. There is no cost involved, apart from the cost of people time. The people that are running the CAP obviously need to put in their effort and their resources to make a CAP work, but it doesn't actually cost you anything to set up or run. In fact, CAP does have some small pots of funding that we're able to provide the local area for things such as positive activities for young people that we quite often find is match funded on the ground. We're also able to provide free resources to the CAP, such as posters, materials, banners, anything really that will help that CAP run day to day.
Thank you for that, Jill. So I think that's brought us to the end of questions that we've had today. So back over to you.
Thank you so much. I have already concluded, so I just wanted to close today's webinar by yet again thanking everybody who was able to join us live. The webinar will be recorded. We will share people's presentations with everybody after the event, and feel free to share the event as far and wide as you like. If you are interested in setting up a CAP, either aimed at young people or young adults, please do get in touch via our website, communityalcoholpartnerships.co.uk, or you can follow us at CAP UK Tweets. That's TWEETS. Thank you and goodbye.